Hey everyone, welcome to week 5. I'm sad I won't get to see some of you in person in Zoom this week. Hopefully those of you that missed our Zoom meeting last week read the to-do list and completed the activities that we did in the Zoom meeting. Those will be counted for points, so if you haven't done that, you'll want to make sure that you read the to-do list for week 4 and complete those STEM activities. I just completed looking over your misconceptions lesson plans, and you did a good job of identifying the misconceptions, of using those ideas to try to find out about students' thinking and your participants, and then addressing any misconceptions they had. So I was really pleased to see the work that you did on those and how thoughtful you were in determining activities to use with them. Most of you included your students' work, so it actually showed what they're thinking and where those misconceptions were and how they changed over time. So good work on that. So we have a lot to do in the next couple weeks to finish up. You're going to be doing the big project for this term, which is writing a lesson plan for an outdoor school activity. And so we're going to start on it this week, and it will continue, and you'll work on it next week and then turn it in. That will be kind of your final project. So to get started, you need to learn some things about including and incorporating literacy in science education. And so for week 5, you have a couple of assignments. You're going to do a using science trade books assignment. And so if you look on Moodle under week 5, there is a template that you will need to complete that actually instructs you on questions. And then you're going to, in order to answer the questions, you're going to actually take statements from the 2 articles that I've recommended and use the evidence from the articles. So these are not, so for instance, your first question is why use a science trade book? So first of all, you have to know what a trade book is and how they're used. And so I've given you 2 articles to read. One I've provided on Moodle, that's Bringing Back Books. And the other one you actually have to use our library resources to find and download. It is available through WU's library, and that's using trade books and teaching elementary science. So using those 2 articles, you're going to answer these questions, and you're going to copy and paste quotes or statements from the articles to answer the question. So this is why we use children's literature in science education and how that can be used effectively. So you need to do that assignment before you go on to the next one, which is your second assignment. Is you're going to do a literacy forum. But before you can do the literacy forum, there's some other resources you have to take a look at. So I want you to take a look at the standard that we're going to be addressing in our outdoor lesson. So everybody will be addressing the same standard. There are 4 options for that standard. So you can do LS4 1, 2, 3, or 4. And you're going to actually choose a project learning tree activity. And you're going to modify it to do for an outdoor lesson for 3rd graders. So you need to be familiar with the standards. You're also going to need to look through the project learning tree resources, your textbook, and look at activities to identify ones that make sense for 3rd graders and for the standard. And then you're also going to need to look a little bit at how do we use science notebooks in science education, and so the other part of literacy. So we're addressing reading with the trade books, and we're going to address writing with the notebooks. And so I've given you some resources, a PowerPoint to look at, an article to read about using science notebooks. There's a website resource. There's also several, or actually I guess a couple of different resources. This is actually Tesla's science notebook, so it gives you an idea of how scientists use notebooks. And then this one actually also, I think, has examples of how real scientists use their notebooks. Below that is actually an example of a PLT activity that was used and modified for outdoor school. This one was called Birds and Worms. And this is an example of the lesson plan that you're going to write up. So you'll get a chance to kind of see where you're going with this. And so you don't need to write it this week. That will come next week. But what you do need after reviewing these resources, doing this assignment in the forum, is you need to address how are you going to include literacy in this lesson, this project learning tree lesson. So how are you going to use, and what are you going to use in terms of a trade book? So a trade book, again, is just a children's book that deals with the science concept. And then how are you going to use the notebooks? So teaching students how to read and write in science is as important as teaching them how to do science. So how do you communicate what you're doing? So you're just going to be posting with your small group. Again, this is the same group that you worked with for your science safety station. And so these are just preliminary ideas. You're just kind of at this point going, okay, this is what I think, this is the lesson I think I'm going to be doing out of Project Learning Tree. And this is the trade book I'm going to be using. And this is how I'm going to use a notebook in this lesson for students to record the science they're doing. So again, what is due in this post is I want to know what PLT activity you're going to be incorporating or modifying, and how you're going to be using science trade books or a science trade book, and how are you going to use science notebooks in your lesson. So that's your assignment for this week. Again, there is an example here. You can see the first thing I do when I'm planning a lesson is I think about what are the objectives or the targets, and what are the questions that I want my students to be able to answer. So I did that with this example, and then this is the lesson plan template. So I'm going to show you real quick what that looks like so you know where you're headed with this. So you can do this lesson by yourself individually, or you can pick a partner within your group and you can do it, or even do it, I would say no more than 3 people. So this kind of tells you, so how are you going to assess it? What are students going to do? What's the standard? You're all going to be using one of the 3 LS4 standards. Talks about the 5 E's, and then in here you have to discuss how you're going to use literacy. So that is your task for this week. Hopefully that will be clear, and if you have any questions, please email me. I'm happy to set up a time to talk about this and go over it with you one-on-one. Hope you all had a good week and you enjoyed doing some science with your participants. And I think you'll enjoy planning this PLT lesson for outdoor science.